almost shot off.
Mm-hmm.
And Mr. Bodie jumped out, picked him up. He said he just wanted out of the area. But they couldn't find Matarakia. So as they were leaving, Mr. Bodie spotted Matarakia. And he was burned so badly. Mr. Kerr said, the only thing I'm going to regret is not being able to fly anymore with you guys. And he said, I'm really proud of the air cap. And he had a yellow calf patch sewed onto his bed sheet. And so that's that story.
Greg has many stories from his time in country and is crew chief of 532, and he hopes to travel from San Diego to Nebraska to tell them soon.
And then when I told Mr. Bodie about it, he sent a request hoping that the Snoopy would be put back on the nose. And I thought that would be so great. I kind of like to be there for the opening day when it's put on the pedestal too.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if it has Snoopy on the nose. I mean, that would be something else.
For Papillion Now, I'm Michael Severe.
Welcome to the Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial. This statewide memorial honors the 396 military personnel who were killed in action during the Vietnam War, as well as an additional 4 sailors from the USS Evans. The memorial also honors the service and sacrifice of all our Nebraska Vietnam veterans who made it home but didn't receive the welcome they deserved. Today is your day. Thank you for all you've done for our country. Thank you to all those who contributed to this project, whether through donations, time, or talent. We could not have done this without you. This day has been years in the making, and as we all know, is long overdue. We could not be more excited to share this day with you. Thank you for joining us for the opening of the Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial.
the folks trying to put this Huey back together again.
And I saw two older gentlemen sitting off in the corner with the hats on that were Vietnam veteran hats. And I said, well, here, Carlos, check this out. This is what it's about, man. Those guys didn't get the welcome home that I got. So I do it to all Vietnam veterans. I walked over, introduced myself, and I just said, welcome home. But actually started telling me stuff, and they're like, yeah, what'd you do in the military? And I said, well, I was a helicopter mechanic. And then they're like, oh, funny, because we just got a helicopter. And I was like, oh, really? I was like, how's that working? And they're like, well, we don't have anybody with helicopter experience. We have all these Air Force guys that have jet experience. Welcome to the Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial. This statewide memorial honors the 396 military personnel who were killed in action during the Vietnam War, as well as an additional 4 sailors from the USS Evans. The memorial also honors the service and sacrifice of all our Nebraska Vietnam veterans who made it home but didn't receive the welcome they deserved. Today is your day. Thank you for all you've done for our country. Thank you to all those who've contributed to this project, whether through donations, time, or talent. We could not have done this without you. This day has been years in the making, and as we all know, is long overdue. We could not be more excited to share this day with you. Thank you for joining us for the opening of the Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial.
Well, other people are doing it.
White folder. Came from on white folder. I just called Sheard about the tag, so maybe contact you.
But, all right, my friend, we will talk soon. All right, bye-bye.
My name is Tom Brown,
Caitlin, this is
and
Steve.
I am the president of the Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial Foundation.
George Abbott, I'm the Secretary Treasurer of the Foundation. Tom and I have been working on the Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial since 2017, so it's been a while. Well, Tom had brought a book to a meeting in 2017, and we were all thumbing through it, looking at the various memorials around the country. And somebody raised the question, what do we got in Nebraska? And there wasn't one in there, so that's when we decided it was time to do something.
The only memorial that was listed in the book was the one in Memorial Park in Omaha, and that's listed as a Vietnam-Korean War Memorial. So that's, we wanted one that just was going to be for the Vietnam veterans. And that's where the idea was conceived of. George had a close relationship with the local architectural firm, which was Prohaska and Associates, and they started making up some drawings and things like that for an initial idea, and made a presentation to our chapter in 2018. At that point, we started to look for fundraising people to get some professional fundraisers. 2019, we formed a corporation for the Nebraska Vietnam Veteran Memorial Foundation. 2021, we got some fundraising done with the state of Nebraska on a shovel-ready grant. Yeah, and then in 2023, we got another grant from the Nebraska Department of Veterans Affairs for $2.5 million, and that pretty much got the most of the funding done for the overall memorial at $7.5 million.
It's interesting, we started out at our meeting thinking we probably need to raise about $1 million for a nice little thing. When the architects came back with the first go round, it was $3.8 million, and since then it's escalated to $7.5 for all the reasons everybody knows with supply chain and everything else. So it's been a long grind, but people have been very generous.
We went looking for property. We looked at all kinds of different locations, and Mayor Black from Papillion visited with us, and he brought us out here to this property here. We found it very acceptable. We met with the city, and they gave us this property for a 50-year lease for $1 a year.
There was a couple of areas, and they weren't finding the site, and somewhere in there, the city of Papillion hooked up with them, and we said we need to make this happen. So we signed a 50-year memo of understanding with the Vietnam Veterans Foundation to say make it happen. And it's going to be right at the top of the hill here. There's about a 2.5-acre flat spot.
It's been one of the reasons we're happy to be here, because it's not been a battle with anything. We have complete support from the city in terms of what we're putting up and maintenance and all those types of things. So it's been a great location for us.
Well, it's a real pleasure to see it start breaking ground after all the years of doing fundraising and everything else.
And originally we were going to try and do the grand opening on March 29th of next year, which is Vietnam Veterans Day, but we got to looking at the potential weather and where we'd be in the status of completion for the thing, and we'd have most of the monument done, but we wouldn't have all the shrubbery and stuff like that done. So talking with Hawkins, we decided that they would have everything 100% complete by May 20th. So we went ahead and decided to move it to June 6th, so we didn't have to worry about all the interference with Memorial Day. And June 6th is D-Day, so it's a very apropos time to do this.
Had a lot of support from the community, from the people that made donations. We've had a tremendous amount of support from Bellevue University and the city of Papillion, and the mayor there and their city council. They've been very, very supportive. And Hawkins Construction has been just a tremendous support also. We've had a lot of support, and we look forward to getting this project completed on time.
The tickets put in the primary binder for
The newly planned Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial will be placed on the southern edge of Sumter Amphitheater. One of the original ideas was to have a Huey helicopter as part of the memorial.
We started looking around, but they're hard to find. And we wanted a Huey, which is a little bit smaller than the Marine Corps Chinook, and our president of our state council of VVA, we have a magazine that comes out quarterly, so he put an ad in there looking for it, because it goes out to all different veterans organizations and whatnot. And lo and behold, this guy called and said, hey, we got one. You come out and get it, and we'll load it up, and you can have it.
The helicopter was in New England. The local group wanted to make sure that the chopper was in relatively good shape.
Okay, well, can we get some pictures of it first? We wanted to make sure, it wasn't in 18 pieces or something. But it is in great shape. Loading it was a little difficult. We had to find a company to come out and pick it up and put it on a flatbed trailer. And then it took about 5 days to get back here. It was in Bennington, Vermont, and it ended up in Bennington, Nebraska.
Howard shares some of the helicopter's history.
From the pictures I've seen, it looks really good shape, because it was a medevac helicopter. And it's got the big red cross on the side, on each side, and it's just as bright as it looks like it was painted yesterday almost. We did find out that it got to Vietnam in 1969, and it flew until 1973, 2 years before the war ended. And it was 2 pilots that flew it.
The Memorial Foundation wants to do more research on the chopper's pilots.
When we do dedicate the memorial, we can get the pilots maybe to come back that flew it.
Chances are those pilots are in their 80s. On the trip to Nebraska, the helicopter got lots of notice.
A guy that stopped along when it was coming back, and they stopped at a rest stop, a guy came over and talked to the driver and said he used to fly one in Vietnam and stuff like that. So there was a lot of interest in it as it came across the United States.
It was also learned that the helicopter has a tie to Nebraska.
Another person has found out that it was used as a rescue mission, and I don't know if it was a medical reason or what it was for, but one of the people that it picked up was from Nebraska. He's a Nebraska veteran. Really? So we're trying to find out names, dates, and things like that.
The foundation is a nonprofit and needs your help. To donate, go to the Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial website. That's nvvmf.org to find out how you can donate. Thanks for watching. For Papillion Now, I'm Tori Pantalian.
Interesting. A lot of these patches are from bullet holes.
It's not often you see a UH-1 this disassembled.
It's overwhelming. There's a lot to be done.
That's before it becomes the centerpiece of the Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial near Sumter Amphitheater.
And then keeping critters out. So there's a lot of things that have to happen that people don't.
22-year Army veteran Ron Elwell is one of the folks trying to put this Huey back together again.
And I saw 2 older gentlemen sitting off in the corner with the hats on that were Vietnam veteran hats, and I said, well, here, Carlos, check this out. This is what it's about, man. Those guys didn't get the welcome home that I got. So I do it to all Vietnam veterans. I walked over, introduced myself, and I just said, welcome home. But actually started telling me stuff, and they're like, yeah, what'd you do in the military? And I said, well, I was a helicopter mechanic. And then they're like, oh, funny, because we just got a helicopter. And I was like, oh, really? I was like, how's that work? And they're like, well, we don't have anybody with helicopter experience. We have all these Air Force guys that have jet experience. I was like, well, I started off on a Huey and Cobra. Got hooked up with Dylan here at the Iowa Western, and we just went from there.
There's only so much I can do.
Dylan Driscoll is the program chair in the aviation department at Iowa Western.
It's really great to just be able to, catch a glimpse of their experience, and the younger students, they get in touch with these guys, and I think that's the crucial connection, because these older people have skills that are going away. A lot of young people aren't interested in these skills anymore, so this knowledge is being lost, and I think that's just a tragedy. So I love bridging that generation gap so we don't lose all this mechanical knowledge.
A great example of this connection between students and veterans happened with the tail boom problem of this 1968 aircraft. You see, it was cut off before shipping.
So this is a unique experience of how we were going to do this, lining it back up. So it was cut, which did not need to be cut. It could have just been removed. The problem is we had to line everything up because this has to support some weight and it has to be structurally sound it's not flyable, but it's going to be sitting up in the air. I called a buddy that I knew was really good in structural, and he said, hey, I'll come up from Oklahoma and we'll spend 2 days and figure this out. So we got here, and kind of Dylan and I were on the right track, but he's like, hey, the only thing that lines up are the rivet lines. And I'm like, yeah, like, how are we going to do this? He's like, we're going to drill out pre-existing and we're going to splice it back together. We're like, sounds easy.
The two Army vets started the process of the repair, and then the students took over.
They already had the stuff that we'd set up, and they saw kind of how we did it. They manufactured it, and I was impressed. They sent me pictures, and I was like, holy smokes. These kids, I was like, that's a credit to the instruction here at Iowa Western and what those kids can do.
There is still a long way to go to get this bird in shape to survive decades of wind and weather,
the skids.
especially that wind part.
You went to the groundbreaking. Those winds that day were, I was like sitting there thinking to myself, man, I got to make sure that tail boom is straight and solid. So we came up with a plan, and it's working, and the kids ran with it. I mean, they did a great job so far. And
so that raises the question, why not just buy a helicopter that was good to go?
One, where's the fun in that? And two, I would say buying one that's finished is not the same as bringing one back. We're bringing another Huey out for people to see, people to enjoy, people to learn from. It's one more out there, not sitting in a field somewhere.
The Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial is scheduled to open May of 2023. And Ron has a plan to make sure this bird is ready to go.
This might be a little ambitious, but I'm going to shoot for August of this year. But I'm hoping that we can get really close to August of having everything back together and then start looking at paint and going from there. I want those Vietnam vets to walk in, and the first time they step on those grounds, that it almost brings them to tears, because we've done right by putting their history back together and having a place for them to go.
For Papillion Now, I'm Michael Severe. Like so many young men of his era, Craig Fouts was in Vietnam at the end of the 1960s. As a door gunner and crew chief for the Hueys, Craig saw lots of flight time and action, but it was something that happened on the ground that changed his life.
May the 7th, we had a mortar and rocket attack, and the helicopter was destroyed. Our hooch was blown down on top of us, and there was several hooches blown down, and we lost, I think we lost 5 helicopters, maybe a couple more.
You can see Craig here in the window of the building before it was attacked. And here's what it looked like after the building completely destroyed.
On May 9th, we flew to Fouts to pick up a new helicopter. And on May 10th, which was my 21st birthday, I was assigned this new helicopter, 532. It was just a brand new ship. I think it maybe had 4 hours flight time on it.
This part is from Craig's journal.
I'm 21 years old today. On the 7th, I was beginning to wonder if I was even going to make it to 21. Not too many people get a new Huey helicopter for their birthday.
532 is the same aircraft that's over at Iowa Western's Aviation Maintenance Facility, and that will eventually be the centerpiece for the Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial.
I could not believe that ship was still around. I figured it'd probably been pushed off the side of a ship.
Like so many veterans of Vietnam will tell you, the Huey's a special bird.
I think that would come from the ground troops that needed those helicopters to pick them up when they needed it, or rescue them when they were wounded. And the sound of that helicopter was so different than any of the others. And it just gave you chill bumps when you hear it even today.
At some point, Craig's 532 was painted with Snoopy on the nose. In fact, the calling card for that bird was mentioned in this article about a daring rescue of a crew from a shot-down ship. The Snoopy and its 086 scout ship, commonly called a Loach, were trying to get to the pilot and his observer.
When we got there, we could see the smoke, and we went to pretty low level to circle it to see if there was a place we thought we could land, but there wasn't. Any ship that got too close to it was taking fire. So we called in the Snoopy scout ship, the little Loach. First of all, the people that were shot down was Mr. Kerr was the pilot, and Matarakia, who was one of my best friends, was the observer. But it crashed and exploded and was on fire when we got there. but we could see the little loach going in and attracting fire from all sides. I mean, I'm sitting here, how can he take all this fire from all sides and still sit there? Mr. Bodie saw Mr. Kerr laying there. I think he was waving his helmet, but his leg was almost shot off. Mm-hmm. And Mr. Bodie jumped out, picked him up. He said he just wanted out of the area, but they couldn't find Matarakia. So as they were leaving, Mr. Bodie spotted Matarakia, and he was burned so badly. Mr. Kerr said, the only thing I'm going to regret is not being able to fly anymore with you guys. And he said, I'm really proud of the air cap. And he had a yellow calf patch sewed onto his bed sheet. And so that's that story.
Craig has many stories from his time in country and is crew chief of 532, and he hopes to travel from San Diego to Nebraska to tell them soon.
And then when I told Mr. Bodie about it, he sent a request hoping that the Snoopy would be put back on the nose. And I thought that would be so great. I kind of like to be there for the opening day when it's put on the pedestal too. Mm-hmm. Especially if it has Snoopy on the nose. I mean, that would be something else.
For Papillion Now, I'm Michael Severe.
Welcome to the Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial. This statewide memorial honors the 396 military personnel who were killed in action during the Vietnam War, as well as an additional 4 sailors from the USS Evans. The memorial also honors the service and sacrifice of all our Nebraska Vietnam veterans who made it home but didn't receive the welcome they deserved. Today is your day. Thank you for all you've done for our country. Thank you to all those who contributed to this project, whether through donations, time, or talent. We could not have done this without you. This day has been years in the making, and as we all know, is long overdue. We could not be more excited to share this day with you. Thank you for joining us for the opening of the Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial.
One helicopter rested. Weather beat it up, time took its toll, and eventually even the tail boom was severed from the ship. But in November of 2020, it once again moved from Bennington, Vermont to Bennington, Nebraska, destined to be the centerpiece of the Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial.
For the Vietnam era vets.
Papillion Mayor David Black has been one of the biggest supporters of the project.
I'm not old enough to be a Vietnam era vet. I grew up watching the names scroll by on TV. Why is it plus years and I wasn't involved? Once we started meeting and understood the importance of it, very quickly realized the city of Papillion had what I thought was the perfect site for this memorial for a lot of reasons.
The aircraft was turned over to the Iowa Western Aviation Department and Dylan Driscoll.
I was in a point where I was getting so anxious about it, I knew I couldn't do the work, and I'd never worked on a Huey before. I was gonna have to start to go to the manual. I had a scale model kit. I was looking at the model kit, trying to figure out what.
But that's when fate stepped in for the first time, in the way of a 22-year Army vet who spent his career crewing helicopters.
That's how I ended up meeting Dylan, because they were like, hey, what did you do in the Army? And I said,
Ron Elwell eventually joined Dylan and his students in this hangar.
And now I've got this helicopter in pieces in the hangar to get it going. So in the beginning, a lot of it was students. So if you guys want to come on up, come on, you do a recognition. I'll let you.
Together, the team took on the project to get the ship ready to be displayed. And that's when fate stepped in again.
George texted me and he was like, hey, what's the full tail number? I sent it back and he's like, we found the original crew chief. I'm like, there's no way. Sure enough, not only that, but now we have the original crew.
The whole story and the sequence of events of how it happened is just amazing. You know, it's like it was meant to be. Tom Reinhardt initially saw the tail number, got a hold of Craig Fouts, who was the original crew chief on the aircraft. And of course, I flew with him a few times on that aircraft. And then he got a hold of me.
Byron Bodie was a pilot in what was referred to as the Snoopy unit. He and Craig Fouts immediately started campaigning for the ship to be returned to its original markings.
We were known as the Snoopy flight, and it started because of the scout reconnaissance were known as the Snoopy Scouts. So it just kind of got adopted, and it was a Snoopy platoon.
Luckily, Craig Fouts kept a journal and lots of photos of the ship known as 532, allowing the folks working on the bird to have a detailed description.
So we quickly redid everything, and we've restored it as a Snoopy helicopter now.
Not only did Craig and Byron return to see their old ship fixed, but so did 3 other members of the platoon.
Went off.
Pilot Tom Reinhardt, who was the first to spot the Huey in a magazine, Crew Chief Ruben Alejandro,
After several minutes,
and door gunner Sam Gohardo. Craig had the honor of talking about each man in his old crew and even telling a few harrowing stories.
under heavy fire, Mr. Ash flew the loach down into the crash site as Mr. Bodie jumped out and put the 2 severely wounded men into that little helicopter. From a higher position, I could look down and see the tracer rounds being attracted to the ship as if it were a magnet. It seemed like they were down there forever. Thankfully, after taking several hits, they were able to make it out of there and get our friends to the medical aid tent in Quan Loy.
At that time, you're young and dumb doing your job. We were trained as pilots to do whatever it took to support the people on the ground. So that was just inbred, you just do it.
Tom and Craig were together in 532 when a scout helicopter was shot down right in front of them.
He hovered there for 20 to 30 minutes, waiting for the colonel and the first sergeant to come back to the ship. Unfortunately, they didn't survive, and we were running low on fuel. But the concentration and the skill it took to hover for that long was incredible.
Ruben and Craig were in the same building when it came under attack from enemy fire.
This one huge explosion blew our hooch down on top of us, burying us underneath the rubble.
It was then time for the men who last saw the helicopter more than 50 years ago to see it once more.
Wow.
It's your bird.
Wow, what a good job on the stupid. That's perfect. It's better than the one that's on it. So perfect.
Your tail number.
I was pointing all that out.
Yeah.
The elevators, everything. The back, the 3-2, everything.
Yep.
Thanks, man. That was great.
Yeah.
This is our spot. Well, Reuben, who would have thought this would ever happen?
Yeah, really.
I can't even believe this. And look at the job they did.
Yeah, I know.
It's incredible, right?
We're just, I don't know, I'm just overwhelmed.
As special as it was to see this helicopter that meant so much to these men in their youth, seeing each other again, telling stories and spending time meant even more.
I just can't even believe it that all these guys got together. Both pilots came out, both crew chiefs, and it's been 53 years since I've seen them all. He's sitting in this.
The final touch was for those who worked on the helicopter. And
no longer here.
I appreciate you so much for all of this. And I wasn't expecting it to look this good, you know, because it was in such bad shape.
for Papillion Now, I'm Michael Seville. This is a miniature version of what's being called 3 on the Ground. 2 soldiers carrying a wounded one to a helicopter. It's borrowed from a moment in time.
Even within the Vietnam era, there was a lot of changes in uniforms and equipment, so we picked a date that was based on that AP photo that was taken in June of 1968.
Troy Muller is a professional artist that works with the New Century Art Guild, a nonprofit that supports veterans who are seeking new careers in art.
It means a lot to myself and to the nonprofit New Century Art Guild I represent. We've already been serving veterans for almost 2 decades.
When the project is completed, it will, along with the UH-1 Huey, be the centerpiece of the Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial. In all, from beginning to completion, taking about 18 months.
Yeah, there's nothing easy about bronze sculpture. It's very time-consuming and labor-intensive. I've been at this for a year, and everything takes much longer than you think it will.
First, Troy had to create a virtual design of the project using scans from present-day airmen.
One day in January of last year, I had several members of the 55th Squadron at SAC volunteer to be the soldiers in the scan. So we had a high-resolution scanner, and essentially we scanned the poses, both in the helicopter and what we call 3 on the ground.
Those are then printed out in a special plastic.
And on top of that, I put a sculpting clay, and I do the details and make changes.
All of this allows Troy to work in a small space.
I essentially work in an outside garage. I don't have a ton of space to work with, so I can work on it one piece at a time, and I'm assured that it will lock together into one, hopefully magnificent. Called the shelling room, and that vat is filled with a liquid slurry, and the waxes are dipped into there, and then we hang them up here to dry. So right now there's wax in there. This is the furnace. And essentially you just light the end to bring it up to temperature. This is the crucible. That's where these metal ingots get put in. These some other projects that they're casting.
Sculptor left stranger to working on big projects.
I did the piece that absorbed 45 feet tall. And then I have one 45 feet tall laying on a flatbed over just up 11th Street a little bit.
Together, the men have a target date of summer 2023, or so.
Can't rush the right job. Got to do it.
Done in the greatest honor. And I've met a lot of great veterans along the way.
For Papillion Now, I'm Michael Severe.
We're hoping that this overall memorial becomes a destination that people coming through the state of Nebraska stop and visit this, because this is something that is being built for the entire state of Nebraska. This is not just eastern Nebraska. This is for the entire state of Nebraska and for all the veterans that served during the war in Vietnam. And out of Nebraska, there's over 40,000 that served.
The other interesting thing is this will be probably one of the most unique memorials in the country, because all of this will have QR codes where people with phones can come up and snap a QR code and get a history of what they're looking at. So we put a lot of work into what goes on the obelisks and what goes on to the various walls and stuff. So that makes it fairly unique, and that's, you know, we're kind of hoping that people understand that uniqueness and they'll come in and get more of the history of the war, what was going on in the United States, both good and bad, because there was a lot of good and bad with the war. So the hope is, because we're located in Papillion, we're basically halfway to Lincoln, halfway to Omaha, and if you look at the population of Nebraska, that's like 80% of the population. Plus we got good routes, 80 and 29 and stuff going through, so we think it'll be a real good draw. Sarpy County tourism is really gearing up to make sure this is on the thing. And if our plans all go well, back up on the back side up here, we'd like to build a building that would house some of the museum type things that would be there, plus a gift shop, plus an office for our executive director. So, and Sarpy County is very interested in participating in that. So,
Sumter Theater is right on the other side of this fence line here. That's where Sumter Theater is here. Then this fence, this wall line here is on the far east side, where it drops off at the far end of the property. Coming around to the south end, you'll see the helicopters here on the south side. And then these other things are benches and the obelisks. There are 11 obelisks, and one for each year of the war. Then in the middle here, we have the American flag with the POW MIA flag underneath it. Then over here we have a wall that was donated, and it has the 396 veterans from Nebraska that died in Vietnam, and the 4 members of the USS Evans that died in a naval accident.
I think where the purples are individual flags for the Navy, the Army, Marine Corps, and Air Force, and
Coast Guard.
This guy Howard Ball that was on our board, wherever the Marine Corps flag is, he's got a dedicated bench there, and we're going to do a service when that bench is put in place and actually put some of his ashes underneath that. So this thing becomes very close to all of us that were friends of Howard. His widow, Shar Ball, is now very active with us on the board. She's an honorary member, but she's working on our tile program. So Tom was able to find us a helicopter from a contact with the Vietnam Veterans Group in Vermont. And they had gotten this helicopter 3 years before, but they didn't have the money to refurbish it. So it was in Bennington, Vermont, and they gave it to us. We had to transport it back. It was interesting because we transported it from Vermont to Bennington, Nebraska, and then moved it over to Iowa Western College, where they agreed to help us restore it. And so with the help of the Iowa Western and some of our members who were familiar with aircraft maintenance, we got it all refurbished, and on September 21st of last year, we had a grand opening. And the interesting thing was, we had an article about this helicopter in one of the vet magazines, and we got a call, because originally it was set up as a medevac helicopter, and we got a call from a guy in California that said he read the tail number on it, and he said it wasn't a medevac helicopter, it was a command and control helicopter, and he was the first crew chief on it. And then he rounded up the rest of the original crew, and they came in on September 21st when we did the grand opening, or the grand restoration, and we were inside the hangar at Iowa Western, did all that, and then they opened the door, the helicopter was outside, and they had 6 grown men that were in tears because they hadn't seen the helicopter or their friends, you know. And the 6 students that worked the most on this helicopter out there talked with these guys, and they all ended up signing the inside of the helicopter. So very emotional time. Yeah, there's in the helicopter itself, there'll be a 60 caliber machine gun gunner when they were landing, and down here will be 2 GIs or Army guys that will be carrying this one soldier, and the idea is that they will be
We would call in the helicopter supply, and they'd also take back our wounded and KIAs. And what we would do, you would normally have the guy in a poncho, and you'd have one gentleman on each end of the poncho lifting it into the helicopter for evacuation and to get him back to the facilities. And the sooner we can get them back to because of the helicopter in the war in Vietnam, a lot of chance of survival because of the immediate medical attention.
and then the gentleman that's responsible for building this, what he did was he went to Offutt Air Force Base and got several models, if you will, actual military people, and then he scanned them to get all the proper dimensions and everything. And then he researched the uniforms, and he built this model based on those exact things. So it's very real and everything he's built into it's incredible. He made up 4 of these in miniature, 1/6 miniature, and we sold 2 of them, and we got 2 more for sale, and there'll only be 4 that'll ever be built. So, and for people that were in country, it's particularly meaningful because, like Tom, they actually did that kind of thing. So, if you go back to the original design of this memorial that Prohaska did, the whole idea was you would come into here and go through all this stuff, and it was kind of confusing. And then the peaceful exit was down here at the helicopter. So that was kind of the concept that Paul came up with when he designed it. And we've stayed with that because it's very apropos. You know, Vietnam was a very confusing war, and getting out of it was, the whole scene down here is they're supposed to represent the peaceful, safe exit out of battles.
I think it's still on. One, two, three. The guitar is pretty loud relative to the vocal. We'll see though, Kevin. All right, Kevin. I'll just play something. A long, long time ago, I'll let you balance. I could still remember how the music used to make me smile.
Welcome to Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial.
Sounds fine to
statewide
me.
Memorial honors the 396 military personnel who were killed in action during the Vietnam War, as well as an additional 4 sailors from the USS Evans. The memorial also honors the service and sacrifice of all our Nebraska Vietnam veterans who made it home but didn't receive the welcome they deserved. Today is your day. Thank you for all you've done for our country. Thank you to all those who have contributed to this project, whether through donations, time, or talent. We could not have done this without you. This day has been years in the making, and as we all know, is long overdue. We could not be more excited to share this day with you. Thank you for joining us for the opening of the Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial.
Check, check, 1, 2, check. Check, check, 1, 2, check.
My name is Tom Brown, and I am the president of the Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial Foundation.
George Abbott, I'm the Secretary Treasurer of the foundation. Tom and I have been working on the Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial since 2017, so it's been a while. Well, Tom had brought a book to a meeting in 2017, and we were all thumbing through it, looking at the various memorials around the country. And somebody raised the question, what do we got in Nebraska? And there wasn't one in there, so that's when we decided it was time to do something.
The only memorial that was listed in the book was the one in Memorial Park in Omaha, and that's listed as a Vietnam-Korean War memorial. So that's, we wanted one that just was going to be for the Vietnam veterans. And that's where the idea was conceived of. George had a close relationship with the local architectural firm, which was Prohaska and Associates, and they started making up some drawings and things like that for an initial idea, and made a presentation to our chapter in 2018. At that point, we started to look for fundraising people to get some professional fundraisers. 2019, we formed a corporation for the Nebraska Vietnam Veteran Memorial Foundation. 2021, we got some fundraising done with the state of Nebraska on a shovel-ready grant. Yeah, and then in 2023, we got another grant from the Nebraska Department of Veterans Affairs for $2.5 million, and that pretty much got the most of the funding done for the overall memorial at $7.5 million.
It's interesting, we started out at our meeting thinking we probably need to raise about $1 million for a nice little thing. When the architects came back with the first go-round, it was $3.8 million, and since then it's escalated to $7.5 for all the reasons everybody knows with supply chain and everything else. So it's been a long grind, but people have been very generous.
We went looking for property. We looked at all kinds of different locations, and Mayor Black from Papillion visited with us, and he brought us out here to this property here. We found it very acceptable. We met with the city, and they gave us this property for a 50-year lease for $1 a year.
There was a couple of areas, and they weren't finding the site, and some were in there. The city of Papillion hooked up with them, and we said we need to make this happen. So we signed a 50-year memo of understanding with the Vietnam Veterans Foundation to say make it happen. And it's going to be right at the top of the hill here. There's about a 2.5-acre flat spot.
It's been one of the reasons we're happy to be here, because it's not been a battle with anything. We have complete support from the city in terms of what we're putting up and maintenance and all those types of things. So it's been a great location for us.
Well, it's a real pleasure to see it start breaking ground after all the years of doing fundraising and everything else.
And originally we were going to try and do the grand opening on March 29th of next year, which is Vietnam Veterans Day, but we got to looking at the potential weather and where we'd be in the status of completion for the thing, and we'd have most of the monument done, but we wouldn't have all the shrubbery and stuff like that done. So talking with Hawkins, we decided that they would have everything 100% complete by May 20th. So we went ahead and decided to move it to June 6th, so we didn't have to worry about all the interference with Memorial Day. And June 6th is D-Day, so it's a very apropos time to do this.
Had a lot of support from the community, from the people that made donations. We've had a tremendous amount of support from Bellevue University and the city of Papillion, and the mayor there and their city council. They've been very, very supportive. And Hawkins Construction has been just a tremendous support also. We've had a lot of support, and we look forward to getting this project completed on time.
The newly planned Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial will be placed on the southern edge of Sumter Amphitheater. One of the original ideas was to have a Huey helicopter as part of the memorial.
We started looking around, but they're hard to find. And we wanted a Huey, which is a little bit smaller than the Marine Corps Chinook. And our president of our state council of VVA we have a magazine that comes out quarterly, so he put an ad in there looking for it, because it goes out to all different veterans organizations and whatnot. And lo and behold, this guy called and said, hey, we got one. You come out and get it, and we'll load it up, and you can have it.
The helicopter was in New England. The local group wanted to make sure that the chopper was in relatively good shape.
Okay, well, can we get some pictures of it first? We wanted to make sure, it wasn't in 18 pieces or something. But it is in great shape. Loading it was a little difficult. We had to find a company to come out and pick it up and put it on a flatbed trailer. And then it took about 5 days to get back here. It was in Bennington, Vermont, and it ended up in Bennington, Nebraska.
Howard shares some of the helicopter's history.
From the pictures I've seen, it looks really good shape, because it was a medevac helicopter. And it's got the big red cross on the side, on each side, and it's just as bright as it looks like it was painted yesterday almost. We did find out that it got to Vietnam in 1969, and it flew until 1973, 2 years before the war ended. And it was 2 pilots that flew it.
The Memorial Foundation wants to do more research on the chopper's pilots.
When we do dedicate the memorial, we can get the pilots maybe to come back that flew it.
Chances are those pilots are in their 80s. On the trip to Nebraska, the helicopter got lots of notice.
A guy that stopped along when it was coming back, and they stopped at a rest stop, a guy came over and talked to the driver and said he used to fly one in Vietnam and stuff like that. So there was a lot of interest in it as it came across the United States.
It was also learned that the helicopter has a tie to Nebraska.
Another person has found out that it was used as a rescue mission, and I don't know if it was a medical reason or what it was for, but one of the people that it picked up was from Nebraska. He's a Nebraska veteran. So we're trying to find out names, dates, and things like that.
The foundation is a nonprofit and needs your help. To donate, go to the Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial website. That's nvvmf.org to find out how you can donate. Thanks for watching. For Papillion Now, I'm Tori Pantalian.
Interesting. A lot of these patches are from bullet holes.
It's not often you see a UH-1 this disassembled.
It's overwhelming. There's a lot to be done.
That's before it becomes the centerpiece of the Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial near Sumter Amphitheater.
And then keeping critters out. So there's a lot of things that have to happen that people don't.
22-year Army veteran Ron Elwell is one of the folks trying to put this Huey back together again.
And I saw 2 older gentlemen sitting off in the corner with the hats on that were Vietnam veteran hats, and I said, well, here, Carlos, check this out. This is what it's about, man. Those guys didn't get the welcome home that I got. So I do it to all Vietnam veterans. I walked over, introduced myself, and I just said, welcome home. But actually started telling me stuff, and they're like, yeah, what'd you do in the military? And I said, well, I was a helicopter mechanic. And then they're like, oh, funny, because we just got a helicopter. And I was like, oh, really? I was like, how's that work? And they're like, well, we don't have anybody with helicopter experience. We have all these Air Force guys that have jet experience. I was like, well, I started off on a Huey and Cobra. Got hooked up with Dylan here at the Iowa Western, and we just went from there.
There's only so much I can do. So
Dylan Driscoll is the program chair in the aviation department at Iowa Western.
It's really great to just be able to, catch a glimpse of the younger students. They get in touch with these guys. I think that's the crucial connection for these older people behind the scenes that are going to grow. A lot of young
experience
Yes. Rushing like crazy. Let's do fairest of the fair. A4. Let's go. What? Yeah, that's what I was saying. B13.
Guys, I'm gonna set some water over here for you. Appreciate it.
What?
I know.
I'm good.
Too bad.
Said 13? 13. No, it's because you put the ones with the numbers back in. Oh, right here. Sorry.
I don't know if this would be any good on food. Minimal Ohio, 89. Beats are good. Change it up a little bit. Let's do some now or B13, Delta 13. A little bit more, a little bit quicker than, yeah. Let's do the George Father, God Bless America, C5. This one can go on March. Going for some Shenandoah? Well.
Yeah, Shenandoah?
Yeah.
I'm just gonna leave it in the front pocket. It's gonna be great. We're taking out the bars, right?
Yes, so we took out the one before A and the one before B. Okay. We get both of those? Bar before A, bar before B? All right, now? Now. 13, Alpha 13, Washington Post. Cut is good. Very good. Marchable. Maybe we can try and get Doug's attention and see if we need to extend it all. Or... Stand by. You guys are done. Okay. Hang on, let's wait until Rob makes his first announcement. We're done.
Ladies and gentlemen, our program is going to begin in 30 minutes. So wander around, talk to your friends, but then we will begin the program right at 11 o'clock. Ladies and gentlemen, our ceremony will begin in 15 minutes. Want to get that notice out there. Please begin finding your seats. Also, if you're supposed to be on stage, we need you all to come down here and get on stage. And I'll remind this to you before, I'll remind this of you, you'll want to silence all your electronic devices before we start our ceremony. So this is your 15-minute call. Go ahead and find your seats. Thanks. No, not at all. Not at all. All right, good morning, everyone. Well, thank you. What a beautiful day. Welcome to the opening ceremony for the Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial. Yeah, finally. We are honored to have you with us here today at Sumter Amphitheater in beautiful Papillion, Nebraska. We'd also like to acknowledge and thank all of those watching this ceremony from Papillion La Vista South High School. Don't make that mistake, South High School. My name is Rob McCartney, and as the proud son of a Vietnam veteran and a career Air Force officer, it is truly my honor to be serving as your MC today. So thank you for that. We do have a meaningful program planned, so let's begin. Please stand as you are able as we welcome the United States Strategic Command Joint Color Guard for presentation of the colors. Ladies and gentlemen, Nebraska Music Hall of Fame member and retired Air Force veteran Jimmy Weber with the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we won were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets ran glare, the bombs bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you to the Color Guard and to Jimmy. Please remain standing for the invocation. It is delivered by Offutt Air Force Base Chaplain Lieutenant Colonel James Pitts.
Let us observe a moment of silence with our heads bowed before we pray. Heavenly Father, giver of life and sustainer in love, you see our thoughts, hear our cries, and even lament our losses with us. Thank you for your presence and watchful care, tender in healing, absolute in holiness. We are grateful for this day and all that has led to these events, the dedication and hard work, fundraising, donations, all beginning from memories that refuse to die and people who refuse to let them. For millennia, people have set markers and raised memorials to mark memories, honor others, and teach the next generations. Thank you, Lord, for setting those things in motion so long ago. Today, as we open this memorial to commemorate those lost serving our country during Vietnam, we ask that your healing would continue and our fallen honored. Be with those who still grieve their loss. Help those who are yet to regain their dignity or sense of humanity, or in recovering from moral injuries sustained so long ago. Let this place be a reminder and a teacher to all who see it, not only of the ugliness and cost of war, but also of the courage of the warrior, their sense of duty, and the many sacrifices they and their families make. Let this place be a healing for those who lost friends and fellow service members, as well as those spirits wounded and hearts broken by the very country they served and its often harsh reception home from an unpopular war. Lord, consecrate this place today and every day forward as a place where these fallen and their comrades are honored, their memory, their service, their sacrifice on our behalf. We pray in your holy name. Amen.
Please be seated. Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel Pitts. Always inspiring words. All right, I want to share a little history behind this stunning memorial. In 2017, a small group of Vietnam veterans from Vietnam Veterans of America Chapter 279, right here in the Metro, decided it was time to permanently memorialize the 400 Nebraska military personnel who gave their lives during the Vietnam War, and also have a statewide memorial. Well, those visionary, some might say crazy, veterans were George Abbott, the late Howard Ball, Tom Brown, and Dennis Shizzle. These vets jumped into the deep end of the project with not much more than enthusiasm, optimism, and determination to make sure that Nebraskans killed in action during the Vietnam War, their families, and living Vietnam War veterans had a fitting tribute. What else did they need, right? Well, soon after the incorporation of the Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial Foundation, some very important partners signed on to help this grassroots project grow. Prohaska and Associates designed the memorial. The city of Papillion offered this beautiful location as the home of the memorial, and Bellevue University continues to provide technology, education, and staff support, along with Hawkins Construction, Iowa Western Community College, West Point Monument, DJ's Dugout, Johnson Granite, and many others. This memorial now stands ready. I'd like to recognize the board of directors of the NVVMF, that's the foundation. Some of them are on stage with me, some of them are amongst you in the audience. The board of directors are Tom Brown, who's president, Lisa Cuevas Jorgensen, vice president, George Abbott, secretary treasurer, John Hartwell, Tom Kimmett, J.R. Richardson, Brian Thomas, Mick Wagner, and John Vela. That's your board of directors. We'd also like to recognize Ron Hassey, Kathy Gilraith, Shar Ball, Brian Keir, Seth Carey, Dottie Berickman, Doris Heaston, and the late Richard Luth, who have all worked tirelessly on this project. You know, every good project has an honorary committee whose members can be counted on for support in many, many different ways. This project is no different. So we'd like to say a very special thank you to the honorary committee members who were advisors, reality checkers, and unwavering supporters of the board and the organization. The honorary committee members are Papillion Mayor David Black, Tim Burke, Jim Chada, Ted Carter, Paul Critchlow, Hal Dobb, Karen Gibler, Chuck Hagel, Tom Hagel, Dr. Mary Hawkins, Bob Carey, who can't be with us today, but I understand Bob is watching online, so Bob, we look forward to when you can be here in person. Dr. Andy Rickley, Daryl Ogerman, Jan Scruggs, Jim Timmerman, and Rick Weimer, your honorary committee. And I also want to mention the executive director of the Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial Foundation, Ron Elwell. Thank you, Ron, for all you're doing. We do have some special guests with us today on the stage. In addition to our speakers, whom you'll hear from a little bit later on, we'd like to welcome the following. Carter Malsby. Carter is the grandson of the late John Nick Malsby, one of the original flight crew members of the helicopter at the memorial. Now, Nick was unable to come to the unveiling of the helicopter after its restoration, so we are grateful that Carter is with us here today. Laura Laird. Laura is the widow of Jim Laird, one of our fallen who is honored at the memorial. One of our speakers, in fact, Paul Critchlow, recently had an op-ed in the Omaha World Herald honoring Jim's service as well as Laura and her family's sacrifices for our country. Sherry Fouts is the sister of Jim Fouts, one of Nebraska's Vietnam War Medal of Honor recipients. We do have a representative from the Miguel Keith family. Miguel, a North High graduate, served in the Marines during the Vietnam War. He, too, is a Nebraska Vietnam War Medal of Honor recipient. Congressman Mike Flood, here on stage. Thank you, Congressman, for being here. Also on stage, George Abbott, a Navy veteran and the Secretary-Treasurer of the Foundation's Board of Directors. Lisa Cuevas Jorgensen, she is the Vice President of the Board of Directors, also the Senior Director for Community Initiatives at Bellevue University. Also in our audience, we'd like to welcome any state senators and other elected officials who've joined us today. John Hilgert, Director of the Nebraska Department of Veterans Affairs. Ken Stinson, a philanthropist, supporter of the memorial, and also, yes, a Vietnam veteran. So a special thank you as well to all the memorial's donors and supporters who are with us today. Thank you all. Now, as you've heard, many people and groups have worked together to make this memorial a reality. And we want to hear from some of those partners and supporters now. Among them, Nebraska Governor Jim Pillen. Governor Pillen, please come up and share us your thoughts.
Thank you, Rob, and good morning, everybody. This is absolutely incredible, unbelievable privilege for me, kid from 100 miles west of here, to be here today. Maybe the couple things I want to share that I think are really, really important. This is an incredible crowd, and in Nebraska. The thing, if I can give a gift of appreciation, I try to all the time. What do we love the most about Nebraska? It's we the people. The people are an incredible place. We live in the greatest place in the history of civilization. I think it's really important that we always remember that and we appreciate it. And then second, thank you to all the veterans for all your phenomenal sacrifices. This year, celebrating 80 years of World War II and recognizing with Director Hilgert, we have 800 living World War II veterans that we'll be recognizing with medallions this coming year. But today's Vietnam veterans, my time of life, it was like yesterday. It was like yesterday when I knew exactly where I was, when a guy in Platte Center, Nebraska named Tuffy Novak lost his life serving in the Vietnam veteran, in the Vietnam War. And then it wasn't very long after that, a neighbor just lived 200 yards across the field. and got word that Dale got wounded very, very severely with a head injury. And I remember it like it was yesterday. On a Sunday night, we all went over to the Losky family's house because his mom, Loretta, flew over to Laos to be with Dale because it was really serious. And we had the whole neighborhood together to find out how Dale was doing. Those are moments as a young boy that impact you that you never forget about. And so as your governor, the first international trade mission that I went on was very intentional because of the friends that I had that were Vietnam veterans said, Vietnam, the people of Vietnam, just like Nebraskans. So it was very intentional, and we did our first trade mission last year in Vietnam. And here's what took place. In Vietnam, it's over 100 million people. 50 million of the people are under 40 years of age. It's the largest growing economy in Southeast Asia. And we were all over the country, and the last day, we got word that the Prime Minister wanted to have a meeting. So I, as your governor, got to sit down and have a meeting with the Prime Minister. And we talked about our countries. And we talked about my experience. And what's really important to share with you is the Prime Minister said to me, please tell your friends who are Vietnam veterans how incredibly grateful I am as the Prime Minister of Vietnam, and we, the people of Vietnam, are for the Vietnam veterans. Because of their sacrifices, because of their presence, we are an incredibly different country and people today. Please make sure that every one of your friends know how special they are, and the families that lost, that their loss is not in vain, and that all Vietnam veterans' sacrifices is making an incredible difference and living on today. I certainly did not expect to have that take place when I went to a trade mission to sell Nebraska cattle and corn and soybean meal. But that was an extraordinary moment that touches me deeply, and I hope all of you that are Vietnam veterans, that it touches you, that you today can say, our work, our sacrifice not only made a huge difference for our liberties here in this country, but that it made a difference for the people of Vietnam. Because it is a growing country, still one party, but a very, very Western mindset and doing business like we do here in Nebraska. So let me just simply say congratulations to all that's making this memorial, making it happen. It's what we do in Nebraska. We come together and make things happen for the greater good so that the Vietnam veterans' sacrifices live on for generations and generations to come. Incredible privilege for me to be here. Congratulations. God bless everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. Chuck Hagel is perhaps one of Nebraska's most notable Vietnam veterans. Chuck is a former Secretary of Defense, served as United States Senator representing Nebraska from 1997 to 2009. He served in the Army and received 2 Purple Hearts while as an infantry squad leader. When asked to join the honorary committee for the memorial, he accepted readily and has been a stalwart supporter ever since. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Secretary Chuck Hagel.
Rob, thank you very much. Governor Pillen, thank you for your leadership and your important comments. And I do think they reflect the reality of just one consequence of those who served in Vietnam sitting here today, and the families of those who served and those who died. This memorial is yours. It is for you. It is for the families of those 400 Nebraskans who lost their lives in Vietnam, and for every Vietnam veteran. I know Nebraska is very proud of this memorial, and I know all of us who had a small part in helping get it built are very proud. Very proud of many parts of what we're seeing today, but especially a couple of parts that I think need to be noted. In March of 1982, I was one of the speakers at the Vietnam Veteran Memorial in Washington, D.C. Many of you have been there many times. And you know what that says. Very quietly makes that solemn statement. But I said at the time in my remarks that there is no glory in war, only suffering. And that is the case. It is the case in every war. And especially on the 80th anniversary of D-Day that we celebrate today, along with this significant and beautiful Vietnam Veteran Memorial, it's important we reflect on that, because it is service. Service is the most important to any of us in our lives, especially service to each other, service to your country. We serve our country in many, many ways. You don't need to be a veteran to be the only citizens of a nation to serve your country. You serve it in a lot of ways. But veterans are very special for the obvious reasons. In the Vietnam veteran generation in particular, these men and women who served in Vietnam didn't have anything to do with making policy, the policy that sent them to Vietnam, but their country asked them to do something, and they did it. And they did it in a very important way. I don't know of a war in our history, maybe the Civil War, but no other war has been as controversial, that has divided our country so much. And we're seeing some division and polarization today in our country. But I think it's important to remind ourselves, especially today, that monuments bring people together. Monuments don't divide people. The war is over. And we reflect on those who served in the war, those who answered their country's call, and they did what their country asked them to do. And at a time in our country when we need a lot more of that. This monument helps us. Doesn't solve all the problems and the differences, nor should it. But it reminds us again, what the governor spoke of, that we're Americans. We're Americans first. And we've always been that way for 250 years. It's the reason we've prospered. No country on earth that has that record like we have it. A monument also reminds us of how fortunate we are to live in this country. We don't do everything right. We make mistakes. But every war we've had, and each is different, obviously. After the war, it's important to bring our people back together and not focus on the differences that created that war or the differences that we have today, but more on the people who fought those wars and their families. My brother Tom and I, and Tom was mentioned, Tom is here today, we served together in Vietnam in 1968. And we've often remarked that when we were in Vietnam in 1968, we saw uncommon valor. We saw uncommon things, special things that we would have never realized or seen. These uncommon acts of courage and valor and selflessness for others. They were done by just ordinary soldiers, ordinary people. But it tells you something about who our ordinary Americans are. There's no ordinary American. There's no ordinary Nebraska. I don't know if we're God's chosen few or not. We'll all find out one day, and I'm in no hurry. But we are a special people. And it's memorials like this that remind us of that. And we should cherish that and focus on that part of our lives and our country and our system. And each of us try to make it better every day. A sense of purpose in your life, is, as we all know, is critical. A sense of service is absolutely critical. And that's service to others is, if there's one magic about our country, is very much a magic of our country. To our Vietnam veterans here today, and again, the families of the 400 who perished in that war, thank you. And thanks to all who had a lot to do with building this memorial, and there were a lot of people who did that. Some were mentioned here today, but so many people helped get this done. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you, Secretary Hagel. Well, next we'd like to invite State Senator Mike McDonald to say a few words. Senator McDonald represents South Omaha, is at the end of his second term in the unicameral. While serving on the Appropriations Committee, Senator McDonald championed the cause of the memorial, and it resulted in a $2.5 million grant that brought the fundraising for the memorial across the goal line. Please welcome Senator Mike McDonald.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for the invitation to be here. I'd like to start by recognizing some state senators that are here today and ask them to stand. Senator Brewer, Senator Clements, Speaker Arch, Senator Vargas. I hope I didn't miss anybody. Without their support, without their help in the Capitol, that $2.5 million would have not have been possible. So please give them a round of applause. My father served in the Navy during World War II. My uncle served in the Navy during the Korean and Vietnam War. My son currently is part of the Nebraska Air National Guard. Very proud of their service. Today, before we got started, after walking around the memorial, seeing it for the first time in person, I was talking to Mayor Black, and he said he's already been being contacted from around the country about this memorial and what they're hearing, how great it is, and it is. It's a great memorial. It's not enough. How do you truly thank someone that sacrificed and gave away all of their tomorrows for their country, their family, friends, and neighbors? You just can't. You just can't truly thank them. That kind of sacrifice. But we can honor it. We can learn from it. What I'm asking everyone today at some point, take a moment to pray to God, to remember, to honor those that made the sacrifice, but also to learn and say, how can we all work together to honor and help our country, our family, our friends, and our neighbors? That's a true step towards thanking them, because their example, their memory, of course, will be here, but it'll be with us as we learn from them and go out and make our country a better place for all of us. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you, Senator McDonald. Now, it was not an easy task to find a location for the memorial. However, one mayor, one city opened its community to the project with an enthusiasm that the board of directors believes could never be matched by any other location. So please welcome Papillion Mayor David Black, who'll give us his thoughts on why it was important for Papillion to step up. Mayor.
A huge thanks to the Memorial Foundation Board, Bellevue University, Hawkins Construction, all of the donors. We wouldn't be here without you, but bringing it down a little bit. Periodically over the last 15 years, that site where the memorial is at, it's been a natural, serene area. And we've got the recreation area with a lake next to us. We've got the amphitheater, and we really wanted to protect this area. And there's a lot of people and ideas that have wanted to develop up there, and the city council and us have said no to everything because we didn't want to change that site. When the foundation representatives first met with the city, it took us all of about 15 minutes to say that's the site for Nebraska's memorial. And that started the relationship. Dottie, I still remember the day. I want to give 3 specific thanks and then a couple of recognitions. I'm not sure where everybody's at, but the city council, we would not be here without them. Mr. Steve Ingberg, if you'd stand up, Mr. Tom Mumgard, Ms. Luann Kluk, Mr. Bob Stubbe, Mr. Jim Glover, Mr. Jason Gaines, Mr. Steve Sunday, and Mr. David Fanslow. Thank you very, very much. When the idea was originally presented to each of you, you enthusiastically got behind it, didn't question it, said it was the right thing to do. And very shortly after that, the city ended up signing a 50-year memo of understanding with the foundation board to jointly do this foundation. So again, we wouldn't be here today without your support. So thank you again. Second thanks goes to our city administrator, Amber Powers. That 50-year agreement, when it was crafted, very little was known. It was a new relationship. The two organizations didn't know each other. Everything was conceptual, and not a lot of specifics were known, and we said we were getting into a 50-year relationship. Just think about that. You've got a kid that's going to date, and you're saying you're going to go get into a new relationship with a long-term commitment, high-level expectations, and we don't know any details. It's kind of ripe for conflict. And a lot of misunderstanding. However, a lot of trust went into the relationship. And it was during that project, Amber really guided a lot of that. If a question ever came up, an issue was raised, an item needed to be discussed, in every way, the trust was strengthened, the relationship was strengthened, the resolutions were a win-win for both the city and the foundation. And it was because of your leadership, both the city and the foundation, we signed an amendment to our agreement just last month, and we renewed it, and we restarted that 50-year clock, and we were talking about some other ideas with the memorial as well. So Amber, thank you for your leadership throughout all of this. And it's already been mentioned, but the next one does go, well, the thanks is to the state of Nebraska. This project was going on during COVID, during supply chain issues, flooding back east where the quarry that has the granite was underwater, inflation. If you're a not-for-profit working on a budget, every one of those works against you. Your project line's being blown, your budget's being blown, there's cost overruns, and that's not friendly to a city who doesn't want to use the additional dollars and to a not-for-profit. So it was at the end, it actually was the state legislature, and Senator McDonald allocated some funds for a memorial for the state of Nebraska. The legislature approved that. Governor Pillen included it into his budget. Thank you, Governor, for that, and the legislature passed that budget. And then the grant program went over to the Nebraska Department of Veterans Affairs. John Hilgert is here, who is the director, and this memorial was awarded the grant, and it was that grant that kept the project on time, and is why we're here as well. So thank you well to the state of Nebraska. Just two recognitions. When you walked in, there was the American flag that was flying outside of there. If you're with the Nation of Patriots, would you please stand up? The Nation of Patriots, a lot of people are not aware, but they're known for what's called the Patriot Tour. They take one single U.S. flag and they drive it around the United States on a motorcycle escort. They hit all 50 states in 115 days. And the program is to help disadvantaged veterans. And for the first time last year, Nebraska was the host state for the Nation of Patriots, and Papillion was the host city. And so last year, Congressman and retired General Don Bacon had that flag flown over the U.S. Capitol. It was brought down, it was folded, and it was brought right here. The flag was then handed over to the flag bearer of the Patriot Tour. That flag drove through all 50 states, and it came right back here in a ceremony of the handoff. And the first time that was unfolded and raised was this morning for this ceremony. So Nation of Patriots, thank you. and some people may think it's crazy, let's take a flag and drive it around 50 states, but I just think it shows the creativity of organizations that want to help our veterans. So anybody involved with any organization helping veterans, no matter how small, thank you for what you do and keep doing what you're doing. The last one, if you are a Purple Heart Purple Heart, if you're able and willing to stand, please stand. We have the Military Order of the Purple Heart national organization 32 years ago started a program that they call the Purple Heart Trail. That's a symbolic trail across the nation. And the trail, it's an honorary system of roads and memorials and bridges and significant cities that together create a virtual trail across the United States. With today's dedication, the Nebraska Vietnam Memorial is the newest memorial on the Purple Heart Trail at a national level. So to officially recognize that, I do have a proclamation that I would like to read. Whereas the city of Papillion, Nebraska is a Purple Heart city, and the Purple Heart is a symbol of the exceptional bravery displayed by our nation's military personnel who have been wounded or paid the ultimate sacrifice in combat while defending our freedom. Whereas the mission of the Military Order of the Purple Heart is to foster an environment of goodwill among the combat wounded veteran members and their families, promote patriotism, support legislative initiatives, and most importantly, make sure we never forget. Whereas on November 11, 2023, Papillion became a Purple Heart city within the Military Order of the Purple Heart's Purple Heart Trail program that was established in 1994 for the purpose of creating a visual reminder to those who use the road system that others have paid a high price for their freedom to travel and live in a free society. Whereas Papillion has partnered with the Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial Foundation to construct a dedicated Vietnam Veterans Memorial for the state of Nebraska. Whereas those Nebraska Purple Heart recipients who succumbed to their combat wounds and are recognized and killed in action are specifically named on an honor wall within the memorial, along with the 4 Nebraskans from the USS Frank E. Evans June 3, 1968 incident who were not recognized on the wall in Washington, D.C. Whereas the memorial has a dedicated obelisk for each year of the Vietnam War, each with a specific reference to major activities of that year. Whereas the centerpiece of the memorial is a 1968 H-1 Huey, tail number 15532, whose original crew is found and have come together for the memorial dedication. Whereas for those veterans who served in country, the iconic sound of the Huey was the sound of freedom. However, those combat wounded, the distant iconic sound of the Huey was the sound of rescue and potentially the hope of going home. Whereas as one Nebraska mayor, who is a Purple Heart recipient, says a Huey saved his life. Whereas the Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial is dedicated to those who served, it serves as a reminder to the sacrifices made. Through education, it is to teach future generations about the Vietnam War. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, David P. Black, Mayor of the City of Papillion, hereby do proclaim the Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial is a Purple Heart Memorial. I urge all citizens, businesses, and organizations to join me in expressing our deepest gratitude to the Purple Heart recipients who have valiantly defended our freedoms. Let us honor their sacrifices and show them the respect and support they earned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Black. Above and beyond. Above and beyond. Well, it may seem unusual for an educational institution to be so invested in a project like this, but Bellevue University has a long history of serving military personnel and their families. When the founders of the project made their request to Dr. Mary Hawkins for support, she offered the university's educational resources, technology, and also staff time to ensure the project's success. Now, the value of Bellevue University's commitment to the project cannot be overstated. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome President of Bellevue University, Dr. Mary Hawkins.
At Bellevue University, serving military members, veterans, and their families is our heritage. It was a World War II Buffalo pilot who flew in the Battle of Midway, who was catalyst for starting what was then Bellevue College in 1966. Our Military Veterans Service Center hosts thousands of veterans and active duty servicemen and women. In fact, over the last year, Bellevue University was part of a disbursement of over $1.4 million in benefits to veterans through assistance counseling by the VA, disabled veterans, and Bellevue University counselors in the center. And you don't have to be a student to enjoy the resources of this center. All are welcome. A few years ago, when Lisa Jorgensen and Russ Lane got wind of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Project, they knew it was aligned with our mission and that Bellevue University should get involved. It grew, and we expanded our support to bring it to fruition. Although I am the face you see on stage, the real muscle and heart of our support is in the audience today. Would our Bellevue University team please rise so that everyone can see who really did the work here? Russ Lane, Rick Cook, Chris Hay Merchant, Brian Keir, John Bunger, J.R. Richardson, Seth Carey, Andrea Bedore, Leslie LaVoy Anderson, Kenzie Collars, Michaela Miller, Miles Landau, Eli Rigatuso, and most especially Lisa Cuevas Jorgensen. The website, the interviews, the miles of driving to meet vets, the coordination, the fundraising, the creativity, and this "we'll make it happen" attitude is all theirs. There was untold heroism in our Nebraska Vietnam veteran community. Now it is told and visible in images, stories, and recordings by the vets and their families who tell us their stories and let us ask them about their experience. There's also heroism in the whole team of Nebraskans to bring this stunning memorial into existence. I know all of us see in every obelisk, display, sculpture, the Huey, the tiles, and the website, the vision of the Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Foundation, and now for the Vietnam veterans and their families, a dream come true. I love the lore of Nebraska, the pioneer stories, the poetry, and from those, I have my own metaphor of community engagement or community service. It's a barn raising. Well, in my view, this is a memorial raising. It took everyone here to make it happen. Congratulations.
Thank you, Dr. Hawkins. Next, we'd like to ask David Langenberg of Hawkins Construction to say a few words. I believe it was Dr. Hawkins, no relation to Hawkins Construction, who introduced the foundation to the Hawkins Construction organization. So thank you for that, Dr. Hawkins. Hawkins Construction has proven that it's the right company to do the job. David, please come forward.
Yeah, I don't know if I should thank Mary or maybe talk to her off camera a little bit, but anyway, it's been a good relationship. Before I begin to go too far, I'd like to thank our company's president and CEO, Mr. Chris Hawkins, for his support the last 4 years through this project. Thank you, Chris. I'd also like to recognize the commitment from Senator Mike McDonald and Matt Miller. Matt Miller and Mike happen to be childhood friends, so without their help, we never would have got this project across the finish line. So the way I put it is, two South Omaha guys and a farm kid walk into a coffee shop. That's where we hatched this idea to gather funds to complete the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. Lots of meetings, Hamat, and lots of texts. I felt like a covert operation, but it worked. So anyway, hats off to both you guys. Couldn't have done it without you. And I also appreciate the partnership with Mayor Black and the City of Papillion. Again, this wouldn't have happened without them. My involvement started with this project back in 2020. My good friend Mary Hawkins gave George Abbott my name. He was looking for some anybody to help them with the construction of this. So either thank you, Mary, or thanks, Mary. Anyway, it's worked out great. My first meeting with the foundation, I saw their vision and understood their issue they were having with fundraising. So I said, I'm in. All feet, all hands, I'm in. There was a secondary reason I wanted to be involved with this project, and it's kind of personal. I went to high school in Winside, Nebraska, which is a small farm community, population 380 back at the time in northeast Nebraska. We had 3 young men who were killed in the Vietnam conflict. Sergeant Robert Wagner, KIA 1968. Private Mark Witt, KIA 1969. And my cousin, Sergeant Robert Dangberg, KIA 1970. This left a lasting imprint on me growing up, and I know there's lots of you out there just like that. But anyway, this memorial gave me an opportunity to honor them and the rest of the Vietnam veterans that's in the audience and through the state of Nebraska. I want you to notice something. I'm going to talk a little bit about construction, because that's what I do. But when you walk through the memorial, I want you to take notice of the fine craftsmanship that took place up there and how pristine this project is. It's not very often that you get subcontractors and everybody to buy in and understand the importance of this project and give their all, and their end result is right next to perfection. So my hat's off to these guys. With that, our Hawkins superintendent, oh, wait a minute, I got to get there. Our Hawkins superintendent, Mr. Rob Carter, masterfully led the data construction with the Hawkins team and all the subcontractors. Now I'd like to give them a hand. Great job. I got to tell you one other little quick story here. During construction, I know anybody that's in aviation or all the military would understand this. We treated this project like a landing zone. So Rob Carter's handle became the tower. He was the last person to know that, but everybody that came on site and brought materials and stuff, everybody asked, did you clear that with the tower? So Rob Carter, our superintendent, was the tower. He finally figured that out when we spilled the beans to him later in the project. But anyway, everybody did a great job on that, and I appreciate it immensely. I want to thank Paul Kokolas from Prohaska and Associates for their design of the memorial. Great job. Trip Johnson and Earl Boston, who provided the granite with all the thought and the tile work, unfounded. So anyway, this project's probably one of the most rewarding of my career, and I've been doing this for over 4 years. Just, that was a joke, but anyway. Anyway, the Nebraska Foundation Board were fabulous to work with, and they started this and hatched this idea back in 2017, and I salute all of you. What a great dream, and now we've made it happen. I'd like to recognize a group that I worked with most often. Lisa Jurgensen, George Abbott, Tom Brown, Ron Elwell, Ron Hasse, Tom Kimmett, Brian Thomas, and John Vela. We did it. We got it accomplished, man. I'm going to say this because this is the last call to the tower. Rob, our work is complete. Great job. One last thing, I'd like to pay homage to our former chairman, Mr. Kim Hawkins, who didn't get to see this project completed. He passed away last year, and he would have been very proud of this project. With that, I'm going to use Kim's signature closure. God bless all of you, and God bless America. Thank you.
David, thanks. Next, we are honored to have Jack McManus, the president of the National Vietnam Veterans of America Association, with us. Jack is originally from New York City, joined the Air Force in 1965, served with the Air Force till '69, Between 1967 and 1968, he was assigned to Operation Ranch Hand in Vietnam. He's been president of the VVA since 2021, but has a long history of service with the organization. Please welcome Jack McManus.
Good afternoon, I think. Greetings to all who are gathered here for the dedication of this monumental Vietnam Veterans Memorial. Nebraska now joins 49 other states as well as the territory of Puerto Rico, all of whom have their own Vietnam memorials, honoring the service and sacrifice of those who courageously fought. It took a generation of Vietnam veterans to recognize that the sacrifice of their comrades when their country would not. In the process, they began to heal the nation. These memorials often include the names of the fallen engraved in granite, bronze fighting men, or wounded, with the wounded, the nurses who cared for them. As we see here inside the medevac chopper, a gift from VBA Chapter 601 in Bennington, Vermont, bronze statues of the crew members reach out to statues of the troops waiting for rescue in the field. This vivid scenario helps visitors envision the trauma and the humanity of war. The significance of these more than 1,000 memorials should not be understated. It is a far cry from the reception that Vietnam veterans received when we first returned home. Especially today when we are losing Vietnam veterans at a rate of at least 500 deaths a day. It's an important part of our work to ensure that our brothers and sisters in arms are remembered. The shift in attitude of our fellow Americans is demonstrated by the many Nebraskans whose contributions made this memorial possible. This signals a hard-won acknowledgement of all service members that would rightfully earn the recognition and gratitude that the memorial represents. I think it's also very fitting that when I got out here, I was accompanied with our National Vice President, Tom Burke, and our Executive Director, Phil Waite. And when we came out, we crossed the big old Mississippi River, and we found out that, in fact, that this memorial, while it is the last state memorial to be built, it is the largest and most significant, and it's also going to carry on with an education center. The value of having a memorial to future generations is that they understand what the symbolism of the memorial is and honor that those of us who served, it was for us to serve this country, and it will be for them to serve this country. Nebraska, a state with less than 1/10 of the current Vietnam veteran population, has created these now hallowed grounds, one of the largest state Vietnam veteran memorials in the country, with 396 names on the wall of honor. We will never forget those native sons of Nebraska who made the ultimate sacrifice. These names include 18 Nebraskans who remain unaccounted for today, who still have not made it home 50 years later. It is Vietnam Veterans of America's solemn pledge that we will never stop in our efforts to bring every one of those veterans home. On behalf of a grateful American Vietnam veteran community, I want to thank our own VVA members, as well as the citizens of Nebraska, for the generosity, hard work, and dedication that went into making this dream a reality in a record amount of time with a little thing thrown in called COVID. So this is absolutely amazing. Spearheaded by Vietnam veterans, this project has been fueled by the passion and freely given labor, funds, and materials of many. Their combined efforts have created this stirring memorial, a memorial that will help ensure that generations to come, that the stories of this Vietnam War will be remembered, and most importantly, no veteran will ever be forgotten. Congratulations, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Jack. Our next two speakers are very special to the Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial Foundation. Craig Fouts is the original flight crew chief of the Huey helicopter that sits high and proud above the memorial next door. Since recognizing his bird in the National VVA's magazine almost 3 years ago, Craig has been a close friend and supporter of the project. Craig Fouts.
Yeah, my name's Craig Fouts, and I would just like to say a few words about what this memorial means to me personally, and to talk a little bit about this helicopter that's on display here today. The reason this memorial means so much to me is because it's one of the most important and meaningful things that I've ever had the privilege of being a small part of. There could not have been a better way for Nebraska to honor their fallen heroes than this. In 2017, the idea of this memorial was conceived by 3 Vietnam veterans, Tom Brown, George Abbott, and Howard Ball. Howard passed in 2021, but Tom and George are here today to witness their vision become a reality. The photographs and the names on these walls represent the Nebraskans that paid the ultimate price by sacrificing their lives fighting for the country they loved. Regardless of how they may have felt about the war, they most likely felt it was their duty and their obligation to answer their country's call. Each one of these service members deserves such a beautiful and solemn place to be remembered by, and what a glorious place this is to come visit and pay your respects. As you walk through this memorial, you begin to realize the high cost of war. Your thoughts may also turn towards the families and the pain and heartbreak they had to endure. Also, let's not forget about the many other veterans and families whose lives were changed by this war. Some became prisoners of war. Many suffered from severe wounds, Agent Orange, PTSD, and other ailments. This is a powerful memorial that deserves much praise to all of the people putting this together, that put it together. The helicopter that you see here today was assigned to the 1st Air Cavalry Division, headquarters company of the 3rd Brigade with the Snoopy Flight Platoon. I became its first crew chief on May 10, 1969, shortly after it arrived in Vietnam. Its primary purpose was to be used for flying command and control combat missions, but it was also used for many other purposes. Tom Reinhardt flew this helicopter as its first aircraft commander. He was assigned to fly our brigade commander, Colonel Morton, for commanding several combat assault missions. Tom is here today, along with several other crew members of this helicopter. Another pilot that I also shared several flights with on 532 is also here. Byron Bodie, who became highly decorated for his courage under fire while flying on other missions in our platoon. Also in attendance is our very own and highly respected Snoopy Flight Platoon leader, Captain Don Davenport, who was also a pilot and later became a lieutenant colonel. Two other very close friends, Ruben Alejandro and Sam Guajardo, drove up from Arizona and Texas to be here. They both flew as door gunners on 532 on several occasions, as did John Malsby. John unfortunately passed away a little over a year ago, and we all wish he could have been here to see this event. However, his family is here to see it in loving memory of him. I feel like he's still here. 55 years ago, while sitting in this exact helicopter, we would never have dreamed that it would one day become such an important piece of history as becoming the centerpiece of the Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial. The Huey helicopter is such an icon of the Vietnam War that I feel it represents the entire war and all the Vietnam veterans from every branch of the military. Speaking for myself and the rest of the crew, we are overwhelmed with the honor of being involved in playing a small part in the process of this memorial by providing the history of this helicopter and for being invited to participate in this opening ceremony. One last thing, I would personally like to give special thanks to the Executive Director, Ron Elwell, for becoming such a good friend and constantly keeping in touch. He's appreciated more than he can possibly know. All of us crew members would also like to thank Ron, Tom Brown, George Abbott, Lisa Jorgensen, Dottie Barrickman, Dylan Driscoll, John Villa, Tom Kimmett, Ron Salisbury, the Mayor of Papillion, David Black, and the rest of the NVVM board. We would also like to thank the students from the Iowa Western Aviation College for helping refurbish this helicopter and for bringing it back to life with our original platoon markings on it. Much gratitude is also deserved to every member of the Hawkins construction crew for doing such an outstanding job in building this memorial, and to Troy Muller for the wonderful sculptures. We would also like to thank all of you veterans out there and all of you donors that helped make this possible. For all the Nebraskans and others that sacrificed their lives for us, we salute them.
Thank you, Craig. And actually, we would like the entire crew of the Huey, if you flew on that Huey, please stand up so you can be recognized. The crew, the Huey helicopter. Thank you so much for coming here, making the trip. Well, next we're going to hear from Paul Critchlow. Paul, who is an honorary committee member for the Memorial Project, is a former journalist and former chief of communications for Merrill Lynch in New York City. Paul, also a Benson Bunny, graduated in 1964, played football for the Huskers from 1964 to 68, and then from 68 to 70, Paul served in the U.S. Army and received a Bronze Star for valor and the Purple Heart for a combat tour during Vietnam. Please welcome Paul Critchlow to the podium.
Well, thank you, Rob, especially for getting in the reference to the bunnies. When I first learned 5 years ago that a distinguished group of Vietnam veterans and community leaders were planning this memorial, I knew that I wanted to get involved. The Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C., built in 1982 by the likes of our own Chuck Hagel, had been instrumental in healing the bitterness that I felt since coming home to Omaha after being wounded in 1969. The welcome was not just cold, as so many of you know, but it was often hostile. And for years, I never talked about Vietnam. In 1990, stepping up to that vast black wall engraved with so many names changed everything. First, it showed me that 58,000 others had made sacrifices greater than mine. Second, it demonstrated finally a nation that cared. I graduated from Benson High in 1964. A handful of my classmates went to Vietnam. Each of us was profoundly affected, but only one did not return alive. On October 17, 1970, Jim Laird drowned in a monsoon flood while on an equipment recovery mission. He was 24. Jim was tall, he was affable, he was liked by everyone, especially Laura Von Riesen, another classmate whom he would marry soon after graduation. When he died, Laura was left behind along with 3 children. One of them, Elin, was only 11 weeks old. She never got to meet her dad. Recently, I interviewed Laura and Elin for a Memorial Day article in the Omaha World Herald. They were remarkably open about the effects of Jim's loss on the family. For generations, grandparents, parents, Jim and Laura themselves, children, grandchildren. The suffering spared no one. To this day, his survivors believe that his presence would have made a positive difference in their lives. Ron Elwell, the executive director, and is no stranger to war himself, likes this quote from a philosopher: "Only the dead have seen the end of war." That's certainly true for members of the Laird family. Laura, Mike, Elin, Jagger, Billy, and Dee. It's true for all of the families in this audience today, and no less so for the veterans who made it through. Like the National Memorial, this ceremony brings a special healing power to within everyone's reach. In 1971, many of you will remember an anti-war song called "Bring the Boys Home." It was sung by Freda Payne, and some of the lyrics went like this: "Can't you see 'em march across the sky? All the soldiers that have died, trying to get home. Can't you see 'em trying to get home?" Today, I hope we can take some solace that all of our Nebraska boys, fathers, brothers, sons, friends, and neighbors have finally made it. They're home. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. On June 3rd, 1969, the American destroyer, the USS Frank E. Evans, was struck midship by the Australian aircraft carrier HMAS Melbourne. 74 men perished, including 4 Nebraskans, 3 of whom were brothers from Niobrara. Gary Sage, Greg Sage, Kelly Joe Sage were the brothers. Gary Hodgson from Beatrice, Nebraska. They were all lost. Well, Linda Sage Va is the widow of Greg Sage, one of the brothers. The Navy personnel who died in that training incident are not currently recognized as official casualties of the Vietnam War on the wall in Washington, D.C. However, the NVVMF, the foundation, felt it was important to recognize the sacrifices of these Nebraskans as well. That's why there are 400 names on our memorial. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Linda Va.
Good morning. I didn't realize I was going to have the honor, so I have no big speech, but I do want to thank all the sages that came to back us. When Eunice found out, Ernie and Eunice found out that they had lost their 3 sons, I just can't explain what it would be like to lose 3 children, what all the sages went through. So I'd like to have all the families of the sages and friends, please stand up and welcome them for being back there for us and they're always helping us for us. We love them very much. Thank you. And I would like to have all of the Frankie Evans family stand up too. You have no idea what this family of Vietnam, the Evans family has done for us. When we were informed that we had lost the 3 boys, we were just alone. We were alone with the whole town, the whole state, everybody, but we were alone because the military, the government, the wall never acknowledged us. And when Ernie and Eunice were very, very discouraged, I promised Eunice that until I died, I would keep fighting to get their names on the wall. But I'll tell you, this reunion today is so magnificent. Eunice is up in heaven. All 74 are up there with them, and they are all celebrating with us. This has meant so much to us. The Evans have done so much for us, for our families, and for everybody. I can't thank them enough for what they have done for us, and my family's done for us, and everybody. This reunion, now that Huey up there on the wall, my second husband, Spencer Va, had a Purple Heart, but a Huey picked him up and brought him to safety, and he's still alive because of one of the Hueys. So I don't know who the pilot was, but we thank him forever for bringing all of the boys back that they were able to bring back. And thank you, honey. But I do think the Evans has done so much, and the 74 that were killed at the same time, the whole world cried with them. Eunice come home, every day she would get 900 letters from all over the world. The world cried for the 74. And I think this celebration here is just wonderful because it has really brought the boys home. It's given them honor, and they'll never be forgotten, lest we forget. Thank you guys very, very much.
Thank you, Linda. And I will put a plug in. If you'd like to hear more from Linda and more about the Evans, we did do a story on it. You can see it at ketv.com. Just search for it. We can hear more about the story and why there are 400 names on our wall. Well, our final speaker today is Tom Brown. He is president of the Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial Foundation. Originally from New York City, Tom settled here in the Metro after he got out of the Marines. Tom has been a longtime advocate for veterans, especially Vietnam veterans, for many years. Tom, please come forward.
Thank you, Rob. Appreciate the
Thanks to all of our speakers before me. You have been also instrumental in making the memorial a reality. A few months ago, during an interview, a reporter asked me, if I told you this memorial would be built back when you first finished serving, what would you have said? I told him my response. I asked him what he was smoking. But here we are today. 7 years ago, George Abbott, Dennis Schutzel, our late, great friend Howard Ball, and I decided to make the memorial a reality. George, Howard, Dennis, and I are not from Nebraska, but we have made this great state our home since leaving the military, and we have made great friends among other Vietnam veterans. VVA Chapter 279 and other organizations across the state, we have come to love Nebraska, and it is our home. So we realized that Nebraska was the only state that did not have a dedicated statewide memorial for our fallen from Vietnam, and we set out to fix that problem. As you already learned, we had tremendous help from so many wonderful partners. Besides those that are here up on stage, I have to thank Prohaska Associates, the architecture firm that designed the memorial. I would also like to thank Troy Muller, the artist behind the statuary you see in the helicopter scene at the memorial. And a very special thanks to Air Force personnel from Offutt, who were the models for the soldiers' statues at the helicopter. The helicopter would not have been possible without VVA Chapter 701 in Bennington, Vermont, which donated the helicopter to us. Dylan Driscoll and his team and students at Iowa Western Community College, their aviation program, along with numerous Vietnam veterans and military personnel, restored the helicopter to its original form. Well, almost. Our bird has been through a lot. That helicopter brought Craig Fouts and his original crew to us, and they are now considered honorary Nebraskans. You guys mean the world to us. Because George is a Navy guy, we came very aware of the Nebraskans who perished on the USS Evans. We are proud to include them here at our memorial. We hope that they will one day be recognized on the wall in Washington, D.C. But until then, they are home with us and our 396 official military personnel who were lost. I joined the Marines in 1965 and spent the next 2 years in Vietnam. Like many in the audience, I have seen a lot. After being discharged in 1969, I never talked much about Vietnam or being a veteran until the 80s. I could go on about how we were treated during the war and after getting home, but that's for another day. The thing is, we did come home. In the 1980s, I realized that I could use my experiences for good. Since then, it has been an honor to work with and associate and advocate for veterans, particularly my fellow Vietnam veterans from the local to the national level. I think that it is what fueled our board, our volunteers, and our supporters' desire to make this memorial a reality, to advocate for those who needed our voices and deserved to be remembered. That desire has also brought us to places and experiences I don't think we ever thought about being a part of. Over these years, to get the memorial built, we met many, many family members who we had the privilege of listening to and learning about their loved ones they had lost. We began a living history project called Project Share Your Story, Through the project Share Your Story, we recorded more than 100 interviews with Vietnam veterans, many of whom have never talked about their Vietnam experience. These interviews can be watched by you, by the students, or by anyone at our website and on the YouTube channel. We've developed lesson plans for schools, spoken to community groups, and have connected with people to each other all over the country. We hope the memorial will be a place of healing. We want the memorial to be a physical representation of our gratitude to those lives that were lost, their families, and our living Vietnam veterans. I don't know that at the beginning of this project, any of us could have known just how much of an impact the memorial you'll be seeing in a few minutes and behind-the-scenes work that was being done that would have had. All of us said, all of this is nothing I could have dreamed about 55 years ago when I left the Marines. While this ribbon cutting and this opening and closing of one chapter of Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial Foundation, it opens a whole new chapter. Now the work of sustaining the memorial begins. Maybe even more importantly, the work of ensuring future generations are educated about the Nebraska heroes of the Vietnam War begins. As an organization, we look forward to seeing the school groups of kids, families, and even tour buses come to the memorial using the QR codes to learn more about the war. We look forward to more people viewing the project Share Your Story and to getting to know those veterans. We look forward to more people becoming involved in the NVVMF to help us keep honoring those who fought for our country in Vietnam. We look forward to involving our mission and vision by developing and building an education center on the land right next to the memorial. That sounds ambitious. It really does, but it is. It is because we must never forget. I promise you, Nebraska never will. Thank you for being here today, and thanks to all of you at the football stadium, to those watching online. Thanks to my fellow Vietnam veterans for staying up and staying in the fight and showing up for today. Thanks to the families of our fallen who are here today and for trusting us with this legacy. Thank you to all.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks to all our speakers today. Well, it's taken more than 50 years to properly offer our thanks and gratitude to the Vietnam veterans. Today, that wait is over. At this time, I'd like to invite our guest speakers, members of the Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial Foundation Board of Directors, and the Honorary Committee to please come up here on stage. We are going to officially open this by cutting a ribbon, so please come forward. So probably have you all stand towards the front of the stage here. So, wow. That's not messing around with those scissors. Good job. Thanks, buddy. Nice job. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it. Jump over here. I'm going to hold the end on this. Oh, thanks. Yes, sir. Good. All right. Well, today. Oh. Did you cut it? Hal, come on. So we want to know that we cut the ribbon for our fallen. We cut the ribbon for their families and for all that was lost. We cut the ribbon for our still living Vietnam veterans who deserve our gratitude. And we cut this ribbon so that our veterans are never forgotten. So thank you. Well, thank you again to all our speakers for their valuable contributions. To the families of our fallen and to our Vietnam veterans in attendance, both here and online, we hope you can feel our gratitude for all you have given our state. We hope you'll find this memorial a place of peace and a healing and reflection. We also want to extend a heartfelt thank you to everyone present here and joining us from afar. You have made this possible. Finally, we'd like to extend our gratitude to all the donors and the volunteers whose generosity helped make this memorial a reality. Now, as we draw this part of our ceremony to a close, the Foundation would like everyone to come back to the memorial tonight at 6 o'clock. There's going to be a special vigil honoring and remembering the 400 Nebraskans whose names are inscribed on the black wall of the memorial. It's important to speak the names of our fallen loved ones out loud. We're going to do that tonight. If you plan on returning for the vigil, please feel free to bring a chair. Thank you again for joining us today. We look forward to continuing this day of remembrance and honor with you all. I want to invite you to make your way from the high school and from your seats here in the amphitheater to our beautiful memorial. And a reminder to those who took a shuttle down here, shuttles will remain running until 2:45 this afternoon to transport you back up to your vehicles. And finally, and personally, I want to say to all the veterans, if you have not heard it, welcome home. Have a great day.